Welcome to Dolphin Dive Daily, your go-to spot for everything Miami Dolphins. If you bleed aqua and orange, hit that subscribe button and join the pod. All right, folks, let's sit down and have an honest conversation about the Miami Dolphins, because what we're seeing right now isn't pretty. The team sits at 1-5 after a crushing, soul-draining loss to the Los Angeles Chargers, and the optimism that once surrounded Mike McDaniel's high-powered offense has completely evaporated. It's like the magic from last season has vanished overnight, replaced by confusion, frustration, and a locker room that feels more like a storm than a sanctuary. And with the NFL trade deadline fast approaching on November 4th, that's just 3 weeks away, it's time to start thinking about what the Dolphins should do. Specifically, whether it's time for Miami to stop pretending they're contenders and start selling off some pieces to prepare for the future. I know that sounds rough to hear, especially for fans who believe this team was built to win now. But when you're 1-5 and staring down the barrel of another lost season, tough decisions have to be made. Now, before we dive into which players the Dolphins should consider moving, let's address the elephant in the room: the futures of general manager Chris Grier and head coach Mike McDaniel. There's a real question about whether either of them will even be around next season. When a team falls this far, this fast, it's rarely just about the players on the field. It's about leadership, vision, and direction, all things Miami seems to be lacking right now. But for the sake of this discussion, let's assume that Grier and McDaniel are willing to do the right thing for the long-term health of the franchise, even if it means admitting some mistakes and letting go of some big names. Because if the Dolphins truly want to reset and rebuild properly, they can't just sit still and hope things magically get better. Let's start with the most obvious trade chip on the roster: edge rusher Jaelan Phillips. The case for moving him isn't complicated. Phillips is young, talented, and probably the most valuable asset Miami could put on the trade block right now. He's playing on his fifth-year option, which means he's headed for free agency next offseason unless the Dolphins extend him. And let's be honest, it doesn't look like that's in the cards. At just 26 years old, Phillips still has plenty of upside, and his production this year, while not spectacular in the sack department, has been solid in other areas. His pressure rate is sitting at a respectable 17.2%, and he's racked up 20 total pressures so far. Those are the kind of underlying numbers that smart front offices notice. But here's the thing: if Miami isn't going to pay him, then holding on to him through the end of the season makes no sense. You're not going to get a better return through the compensatory pick formula. And if you're rebuilding, you need draft capital and young players who can grow into the next era of Dolphins football. Teams like the Detroit Lions and the Indianapolis Colts are both desperate for help off the edge and are in win-now mode. A guy like Phillips could easily step in and make a difference for them. The Lions, for example, are a pass rusher away from being legitimate Super Bowl contenders, and adding Phillips opposite Aiden Hutchinson could make that front terrifying. If you're Miami, that's an opportunity to cash in now while his value is still high. Then there's Bradley Chubb, another big name on the edge who could draw interest. Trading Chubb might be tougher given his contract, but it's not impossible. His deal doesn't carry any guaranteed money after this season, meaning any team that trades for him can get out of it easily if things don't work out. That flexibility could make him appealing to a contender looking to add a proven veteran presence to their pass rush rotation. Chubb's not lighting the world on fire right now, though. He's got 4 sacks on the year, but the deeper analytics and the tape tell a different story. His pressure rate sits at just over 11%, and he's been shaky against the run. The explosiveness that made him a Pro Bowler in Denver hasn't fully returned since his injury last season. Still, pass rushers are always in demand, especially this time of year. Teams like the Baltimore Ravens, the Dallas Cowboys, or even the San Francisco 49ers could be intrigued by the idea of adding a veteran like Chubb to bolster their rotations for a playoff push. Miami won't get a massive haul, maybe a 4th or 5th round pick at best, but in their current situation, that's better than nothing. Plus, it clears some cap space and opens the door for younger players to step up. Next up is Rasul Douglas, one of the few consistent bright spots on Miami's defense this year. Douglas isn't a shutdown corner, but he's steady, he's smart, and he's been playing with effort in a defense that's otherwise been disappointing. He's allowed just 62.2% of passes his way to be completed, which, given how often the Dolphins' defensive scheme leaves corners exposed, is actually pretty solid. He's also shown up as a run defender, something this defense desperately needs more of. But Douglas is 31 years old, and let's be real, he's not part of Miami's future. Trading Douglas makes too much sense, especially when you consider how many teams are desperate for cornerback help right now. The Colts could use him. The Eagles, who are struggling mightily in their secondary, could use him. The Bears, too, might be willing to offer a late-round pick for a veteran who can bring leadership to a young defensive backroom. Miami only signed Douglas in August, so turning that into draft capital after half a season would be a nice bit of business. At 1-5, the Dolphins should prioritize getting younger players like Ethan Bonner and Storm Duck on the field to see what they've got for the future. Now, let's talk about Jalen Wright, the running back who seems to have fallen completely out of favor with the coaching staff. Remember, the Dolphins traded a third-round pick in the 2025 draft just to move up and take him in the fourth round of the 2024 draft. That's a huge investment for a guy who's barely seen the field. Wright was supposed to be the complementary back to Devon Achane, someone who could provide some downhill toughness to balance the offense. Instead, he's been inactive the past 2 weeks and has only 249 carries for 68 yards to his name this season. Numbers that make you wonder if something deeper is going on behind the scenes. It's probably too early to completely give up on him, but at the same time, if he's not going to play, why keep him around? The Dolphins could look to flip him for another young player who's fallen out of favor elsewhere, a classic change of scenery trade. We've seen a lot of those lately in the NFL, and they often work out for both sides. Maybe Miami could get a developmental offensive lineman or a backup safety in return, someone who could contribute immediately. It's not about giving up on Wright. It's about getting value while you still can. Finally, we come to Benito Jones, the defensive tackle. Let's be real here. Jones isn't going to bring back much in a trade. But when you're 1-5 and looking for ways to improve your roster flexibility, even a 6th or 7th round pick can make a difference. Jones actually played pretty well against the Chargers in Week 6, showing some flashes of the power and leverage that made him a solid rotational piece. For a team looking to add interior depth down the stretch, he could be a cheap, low-risk option. Trading Jones could also have some internal benefits. The Dolphins spent the offseason reshaping their defensive line, and moving him could free up snaps for Jordan Phillips, who's been quietly impressive this year, or give the team a chance to elevate Zeke Biggers from the practice squad. When you're rebuilding, that's exactly the kind of move you should be making, giving younger guys reps, seeing who can stick, and collecting as many draft assets as possible. Look, no one's saying any of these moves are easy. No one wants to see talented players leave. But this team, as currently constructed, is going nowhere fast. The offense that once looked like a revolution has been exposed, the defense can't get off the field, and the locker room vibes are toxic. Sometimes you have to take a step back to take 2 steps forward. The Dolphins aren't 1 or 2 trades away from being contenders. There's several key pieces and probably a new vision away from even being relevant. And that's why it's time for Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel to swallow their pride and make the tough calls. Move Phillips now while he still has value. Get what you can for Chubb. Don't hold on to veterans like Douglas out of loyalty. If Wright isn't part of the plan, move him. If Jones can net you a late-round pick, take it. This isn't about giving up. It's about resetting the timeline and building a foundation that can actually last. The Dolphins have been chasing quick fixes for too long. It's time to think long-term. Fans might not like it, but this is how you build a sustainable winner. You admit when things aren't working, you cash in your assets, and you start laying the groundwork for what comes next. Miami's not that far away talent-wise, but mentally, structurally, and culturally, they've got a long way to go. The only way out of this mess is through it. And if that means trading away some familiar faces to get there, then so be it. The Dolphins have to stop clinging to the illusion of contention and start acting like a team ready to do what it takes to actually win. Because right now, the only thing worse than being 1-5 is pretending you're not. Still with us? Then show some love. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments. What's your take on the Fins this week? The NFL world woke up to a bombshell that nobody saw coming. A seismic shake in the Miami Dolphins quarterback room that has set the sports world ablaze. Tua Tagovailoa, the man who had been the face of the Dolphins offense, the quarterback who had inspired hope, frustration, and endless debate since he arrived in South Florida, is officially no longer the team's starting quarterback. Or, to be more precise, the whispers that had been circulating for weeks, those rumors that fans half believed, half doubted, have finally materialized into hard reality. Sources close to the organization have confirmed what had been the subject of endless speculation. Tua Tagovailoa's time in Miami has come to an abrupt, surprising, and controversial end. The timing, the circumstances, and the very nature of this decision have left players, coaches, analysts, and, most importantly, fans scrambling to process what this really means for the franchise. The news didn't come with fanfare or a carefully orchestrated press conference. Instead, it hit like a lightning bolt, initially reported as a mutual decision before insiders began leaking the more dramatic details. According to those same insiders, the Dolphins' management had reached a breaking point after a series of inconsistent performances, injury concerns, and off-field discussions that made it increasingly clear that the future of the franchise could not be tied solely to Tua's arm, his leadership, or his past potential. And the rumor mill, it's spinning faster than ever, because while official statements are polished, the real stories are out there, in the locker rooms, on private calls, and whispered among coaches, agents, and former players who suddenly find themselves in the middle of a drama that feels ripped straight from a Hollywood script. What makes this story even more fascinating is the timing. Miami has had its share of quarterback controversies before, but this one hits in the midst of a season where expectations were high, where the offense had been showing sparks of brilliance one week only to implode the next. Tua, who has always carried the dual burden of immense hype and severe scrutiny, was suddenly facing an organization that seemed willing to pivot in a new direction, a direction that, according to sources, is still shrouded in secrecy. Some insiders hint that the Dolphins are exploring trade options. Others suggest that a complete quarterback overhaul is on the horizon, while a few whisper about a potential internal promotion from within the roster. Every angle seems possible, and every rumor fuels more speculation. The atmosphere in Miami is electric, if not a little chaotic, as fans debate on social media, sports talk radio, and late-night podcasts whether this was a necessary move, a long-overdue change, or an overreaction by a franchise known for its unpredictability. Analysts are dissecting every play, every injury report, every behind-the-scenes decision from the past 2 seasons, searching for a single moment when it became clear that Tua's tenure was unsustainable. Some point to games where the offense stalled under pressure, others to injuries that never fully healed, while still others argue that it's not about Tua at all, but rather about the broader strategy of the Dolphins, their desire to build a roster around flexibility, mobility, and a new kind of quarterback mentality. And yet, no matter how it's dissected, the reality remains stark. Tua Tagovailoa, once a beacon of hope for Miami's gridiron ambitions, is no longer the guy calling plays under center for the Dolphins. For those following closely, this move didn't happen in a vacuum. Rumors of discord between Tua and the coaching staff have been simmering for months. Multiple sources hint at tension, disagreements over play calling, and even clashes over team culture. Some speculate that Tua's vocal leadership style, once praised, may have contributed to friction with teammates or coaching philosophies that demanded a more malleable quarterback presence. Other insiders suggest that the front office had been quietly evaluating alternatives for months, running trade scenarios, and scouting potential free agents, all while publicly reassuring fans that Tua remained their man. The contrast between public statements and behind-the-scenes maneuvering has only fueled the gossip, creating a sense that the Dolphins organization was playing a careful balancing act, one that ultimately unraveled. Meanwhile, fans in Miami have had mixed reactions, oscillating between shock, outrage, and a grudging acknowledgement that the move might be necessary. Social media has become a battleground, with hashtags trending, fan polls exploding, and former players weighing in with cryptic comments that only deepen the intrigue. It's the kind of situation that makes even casual observers lean in, because the human drama is just as compelling as the football implications. Tua, for his part, has maintained a low public profile since the news broke, fueling speculation about his next move. Will he demand a trade? Will he sit out, weighing his options for free agency? Or could he find a new home where his talents are given a fresh stage and less pressure to carry an entire franchise? The possibilities are endless, and every rumor sparks dozens of counter-rumors, creating a tangled web that fans and media alike are desperate to untangle. What makes the story even more combustible is the roster surrounding the quarterback. Miami has talent, yes, but talent alone cannot guarantee harmony or success. Reports indicate that the Dolphins' front office has been increasingly frustrated with inconsistencies in offensive performance, a pattern that reached a tipping point in recent weeks. TUA's injury history, once considered manageable, has become a key talking point in confidential discussions among team executives. The whispers suggest that the organization's leadership is concerned about long-term durability, and that concerns about whether TUA could stay healthy and perform at a high level week after week have contributed to the final decision. Beyond health, there's the question of style and philosophy. The Dolphins, according to insider chatter, are exploring a shift toward a more dynamic, flexible offense that could involve quarterback mobility, quicker reads, and a system less reliant on TUA's specific skill set. That, in turn, has fueled speculation that the team might be eyeing younger quarterbacks with high potential, veterans known for adaptability, or even unconventional options that would shake up the league. Every report that leaks adds fuel to the rumor mill. One moment, it's a potential blockbuster trade with a top-tier team. The next, it's whispers of internal candidates being groomed behind the scenes. And amid all this, the fan base is caught in a whirlwind, trying to separate fact from speculation, truth from the carefully constructed narratives that teams sometimes leak to gauge public reaction. As the dust settles, the impact on Miami's locker room cannot be overstated. Changing quarterbacks is never just about who throws the ball. It's about morale, culture, and trust. Sources suggest that some players are stunned, some relieved, and others cautiously optimistic about what the future might hold. The ripple effect could extend far beyond the quarterback position, influencing offensive line strategy, receiver performance, and even defensive planning. League insiders note that the Dolphins are entering uncharted territory, at least for this season. With a move that could either be hailed as visionary or criticized as chaotic, depending on how the team responds on the field. Meanwhile, TUA's legacy in Miami is being re-examined. Once hailed as a savior, his tenure is now being scrutinized through a lens of what if and almost. Sports historians, analysts, and fans alike are revisiting pivotal games, crucial decisions, and moments when TUA's potential either shone brilliantly or faltered under pressure. It's a narrative ripe for analysis, debate, and endless storytelling, precisely the kind of drama that feeds YouTube channels, podcasts, and sports commentary alike. The ripple effects extend far beyond Miami. Across the league, teams are taking notice, considering how the availability of a quarterback like TUA could reshape trade markets, free agency strategies, and even draft planning. Agents are working overtime, teams are recalculating their roster needs, and media outlets are spinning up coverage that blends hard analysis with tantalizing speculation. The move has ignited discussions about quarterback valuation, the pressure placed on young players, and the delicate balance between talent, durability, and organizational fit. For fans, it's a reminder that in the NFL, nothing is permanent. Quarterbacks, no matter how beloved or hyped, can find themselves on the move in the blink of an eye, caught in a storm of rumors, performance metrics, and strategic decisions that often play out behind closed doors. And in the case of TUA Tagovailoa and the Dolphins, that storm has arrived with a force that promises to dominate headlines, social media feeds, and locker room conversations for weeks, if not months, to come. So what's next? Rumor has it that Miami is quietly exploring multiple paths, weighing trades, free agency pickups, and internal promotions, all while keeping a tight lid on official statements. TUA, for his part, is reportedly taking stock of his options, consulting with advisors, and considering every angle from trade destinations to long-term career impact. And as the speculation continues, fans around the league are left to piece together the fragments, the leaks, and the innuendos into some coherent picture of the future. Will the Dolphins rebound with a bold, innovative new quarterback? Will TUA land somewhere else and thrive in a system designed for him? Or is this the beginning of a longer, more dramatic saga that could redefine careers and franchises alike? One thing is certain, the NFL landscape has shifted, and the fallout from this decision is only just beginning. In Miami, in TUA's career, and in the broader league, every rumor, every leak, every whispered conversation now carries the weight of consequence. And for those of us watching from the sidelines, it's a story we'll be following with rapt attention, because when it comes to football, drama, and rumors, nothing captures the imagination quite like the fall of a quarterback whose time, at least in one city, has come to an end. That's a wrap for today's dive. If you're loving the content, share it with a fellow Dolphins fan, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a splash. Fins up.